The sounds of the season can often sound like this.
So, when are we getting some grandkids?
But with Hilton's Season to Stay sale, they could sound a bit more like this. Or this. Stay and save up to 20% off when you book before January 5th at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay. Minimum 2-night stay required. Excludes luxury and all-inclusive properties. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Did you know Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company? They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just quarterback Peyton Manning, I'm also meditating Manning. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Money decisions don't have to be either or. With Bank of America, they can be yes and. Like yes to sunny vacations and rainy day funds. Can our digital tools and guidance help you create the future you want? Yes. And help you keep enjoying today too. Do more with a bank that asks, what would you like the power to do? Explore our tips and more at bankofamerica.com/yes and.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to DBR Bites, episode number 73. We are previewing the game against the University of the Incarnate Word. More Cardinals coming to town, or at least we travel to see some Cardinals. Now Cardinals are coming to see us. These Cardinals from San Antonio. We'll talk about this game in just a second. I'm Donald Wine. I'm coming to you merely seconds after we recorded DBR Podcast, episode number 671. Jason is still here. Jason, how you doing? We're doing this very quickly because we only have it's like the first time we had really 48 hours between games, so
yeah,
we got to stack these on top of each other.
Right, exactly. And by the way, if for some reason you haven't listened to our recap of the Louisville game, go check after you listen to this. Go check that out. There'll be some interesting, fun stuff. I think that you will all enjoy there. Hey, Donald, I wanted to mention something. We got an email from Evan Thompson, who wanted us to note. He wanted us to shout out the really fabulous success of the Duke women's basketball team. It was about a week ago or so. Duke played top 10 teams back to back. And one of those games
it was in Vegas. It was while I was in Vegas. They played a multi-team event against Kansas State and Oklahoma.
Right. The Oklahoma game is what Evan Thompson wrote to us about. He pointed out, Donald, this is a stat that you and I pay attention to all the time. Assist rate. We talk about it a lot. How much are you sharing the ball? Get ready for a number, people. Duke had assists on 38 out of 40 baskets against Oklahoma. Yeah. A little bit of math here. 95% assist rate. I am stunned. That is like an absurd number. 38 out of 40 baskets were assisted. It, by the way, is a record for the Duke basketball program. Of course it is. It's unfathomable that you could have a number higher than that. And it's worth noting that over the weekend, the Duke women opened ACC play by absolutely wrecking Virginia Tech by 22 points. Duke is currently the highest rated women's basketball team in what is a strong ACC. Coach Kara, building something for sure.
They lost earlier in the week in the ACC SEC Women's Challenge. They lost to South
Carolina. It was a very competitive game.
Yeah, I was going to say South Carolina on the road. Ain't defending national champions, ain't no shame in that. Not a single solitary one. I will say over the weekend, you mentioned the Virginia Tech game. I believe Toby Fournier, who is the heralded freshman, 27-9, something like that. That's strike my math. That sounds pretty good. They are up to number 9 in the country. And again, I think right around this is the very newly released rankings on Monday. They're up to number 9 in the AP, which is terrific. Again, they're talked about as one of the best teams in this country. They continue to shine. They continue to do well. I know Jason and I continue to watch them and kind of awe because it's very cool to see how well they're doing and how again, it feels like all the injuries they've had over the last few years and so many players that they've lost and transfers and things like that. Kara is still continuing to build a roster that's ready for prime time. And we said, hey, they have a loaded schedule in the non-conference season, even before the ACC, which is the best conference possibly in all of basketball. And then all of a sudden, this team has started to turn it together in non-conference, put it all together in non-conference schedule. Really looking forward to continuing to see their success for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you were talking about rankings for a second. They're number 9 right now. The Duke men are number 4. I love a little friendly competition, maybe between John Shire and Kara Lawson over which team can be ranked higher.
I hope the answer is neither because they're number 1, both of them. That's what you aim for, right? But to do that, we have to continue to win, and so we shift gears to the men's side because we have another game coming up on Tuesday. If you're listening to this, we're recording on Monday. You're probably getting it on Tuesday morning. So tonight, Incarnate Word comes to town. The University of the Incarnate Cardinals. They come out of the Southland Conference. They are in San Antonio, Texas. And Jason, before we get to who they've played and their record, I did want to note that they have a couple of links to the ACC and to Duke.
Oh, all right.
So the ACC link, there is one quarterback who started his college career at Incarnate Word that is still playing today, and in fact was for most of the season a front runner for the Heisman Trophy. That quarterback is Cam Ward.
Really?
Cam Ward started at Incarnate Word before entering the portal, going to Wazoo for the couple years he was there before he transferred to Miami this year. So that's your ACC link. Your Duke link is kind of a passive Duke link, but it's a Duke link nonetheless, and it is linked to this podcast. Justin Robinson was once on this podcast. His father, as you know, is David Robinson. David Robinson earned a Master of Arts in Administration in 2011 from Incarnate Word. So again, the Admiral.
I love it.
There, of course, based in San Antonio, makes a lot of sense. He said it's a nice quote on Wikipedia. It said that he earned his master's because he wanted to know how businesses work and how to make them successful. So he went to Incarnate Word and got basically a degree that tells them everything. So that's why he's so successful at business. But I think that's pretty cool. Those two links to this very, very small school in the middle of San Antonio.
You know, David Robinson to me is the personification of there's a great moment and a great sort of saying in Ted Lasso where he says, "Be curious." David Robinson is a man who is curious about the world around him. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Again, he asked the question, how do businesses work? He's like, I should go learn that. Went to Incarnate Word. But unfortunately for us, David Robinson has exhausted his eligibility. He will not be playing in uniform for the Incarnate Word Cardinals, but other guys will. Jason, before we get to those players and about how they play on defense and offense, let's talk about who they've played and their record. They're 5-4 so far in the season, 1-1 in the Southland Conference. And again, they haven't really played anybody. We are far and away the best team they will see all year. They've already played one non-D1 opponent. They have 3 more in a row after they play us tomorrow night. They have wins against Southwestern by 44, Prairie View A&M by 3, Arkansas Pine Bluff by 28, Western Illinois by 11, and East Texas A&M by 12. Not the actual one, the one east of that one. They won by 12.
Yeah,
the losses they have.
Hey, really quickly, like some of these. If you asked me if East Texas A&M was a Division I school, I would not have known the answer to that question.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah,
I knew all the other ones. I did not know East Texas A&M was a D1 school. I knew the school existed. I just did not know that they were of D1 quality. But again, 366 teams or something like that in D1. Like we're gonna slip on a couple of these smaller ones. I will say the losses they have: Cal Baptist by 5, Northern Arizona by 1. Again, a team that teams have seen in early season. South Alabama by 21, and Northwestern State by 2. So again, the only team other than Duke, the strongest team they have on their schedule, according to KenPom, is McNeese. They're in conference. They're 95th in KenPom right now. And then Texas A&M Corpus Christi is 168th. That's the second best team they have after Duke. They are picked to finish 7th in the Southland Conference this year. So again, this is not a team that is expected to compete to be in the NCAA tournament. But again, they pose some pretty difficult things. And Jason, as I lead you into the office, I want you to start with this. Threes and defensive threes are a very tale of Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to the analytics.
Yeah, very much so on this team, and I'll get to that in just a moment. The long and short of it is they allow a lot of a good 3-point percentage, and they shoot a good 3-point percentage. Again, I'll get to it in just a moment, but I wanted to mention you talked about the fact that they haven't really played anybody, and yet their record is very poor. Ken Pomeroy projects that Duke will win this game by 30 points. 87-57. Again, Incarnate Word is number 288 in KenPom. Believe it or not, 288th in the country is like a super successful season for them. Over the past 9 years, they have never been ranked higher than 300th in the country. And this is a program that is just not a program that experiences success very often at all. And their defense, this is going to be the worst defensive team Duke will play all year. They're 350th in defense. I mean, it's possible that Army will have a few bad weeks and maybe slip below them in defense, but for the most part, this is the worst defensive team that Duke's going to play this entire season. As you mentioned, as I mentioned a moment ago, they allow their opponents to hit 39.5% from three, almost 40% from three. That's just a really, really big number. This is a Duke team that at times has struggled a little bit with three-point shooting. Apparently, Incarnate Word just rolls out the red carpet, lets you stand there at the three-point line, stick your finger in the air, check the direction of the wind and stuff like that before you get off your shot, because their opponents hit an outrageous percentage from the three-point line. They are a okay shot blocking team, but that's the only thing they do well on defense. They commit a lot of fouls. Their opponents hit better than 75% from the free throw line. Again, not something you can really control. Defensive free throw percentage is a random stat, but they are randomly not very good at it. They're okay at their 2-point defense, because I mentioned they block shots all right. But if you're among the worst teams in the country at fouling, they commit a lot of fouls. If teams hit a lot of their free throws and you allow teams to hit 40% from the 3-point line, that's a formula to be the 350th team in the country on defense. They're a little bit better on offense. They are a very good 3-point shooting team. They hit better than 41% from three. That's a big, big old number. They don't really shoot a ton of threes. I'll mention in a moment. They got one guy who just fires away from 3-point lane, but the rest of the other guys in their team, even the ones who are good shooters, aren't shooting a lot. But again, when they shoot 3-pointers, they tend to make them. They do a nice job on the offensive boards. Like they're 69th in the country in offensive rebounding rate, which is pretty good. They don't turn the ball over a ton. And those are the things that they do well on offense. It's worth noting that anything we say about them statistically, I just went through some of the stats. Take it with a grain of salt, because you talked about their schedule. I mean, the best team they played is that Cal Baptist team. And again, if you asked me if Cal Baptist was a real Division I team or not, I would not have been able to give you a definitive answer.
We might have to play that game in the off season. Like
right,
I'll give you like 10
team or not
schools,
a team,
and you tell me if they're D1 or not, and I'll tell you if they are.
Right, exactly. Eastern Michigan Baptist. I don't know. But anyway, Cal Baptist, best team they played so far. So all these stats that I've given you, a little grain of salt here. I know Ken Pom tries to adjust for quality of your opponent and such, but man, when all your opponents are like in the 280s and 300s in most of the, in terms of overall ranking, then your stats could be skewed, and we just don't know it because you haven't played anyone like Duke, at all. It's worth noting that they really lean on their starters. Incarnate Word does. They have 3 guys who play more than 33 minutes per game. Big number. They play maybe 7, maybe 8 guys at the most. They've had a couple injuries that have hurt their depth. So I think that, Incarnate Word is going to be a team that's they'll struggle to keep up with the depth that Duke has. And it's worth noting the guys who come off the bench for them are really low usage players. These are not guys who come in and try and really change up the game. They're eating up some minutes. They're trying to do what they can do, but they're not guys who are going to take a lot of shots for Incarnate Word. Their best player, 6'4" Davion Bailey. I want you to remember the name. Davion Bailey averages about 17 points per game. Dude takes about 9 3-pointers per game and hits at better than 41%. And by the way, he did the same thing last year and he hit better than 41%. So he's real. It's not just he's hot right now. We got to, usually this part of the season, like, small sample size. We got a big sample size on Davion Bailey. Dude can hit 3-pointers, rest assured, and loves taking them. He had a run recently. He had a 3-game run where he took 36 3-pointers in 3 games. That's 12 per game. If you can't do that math, that's a man who's bombing away. It's worth noting he is unafraid to put the ball on the floor, though. If you fly at him to stop the 3-pointer, he'll put it on the floor and get in the lane for some nice mid-range stuff. The so-called bad shot that I always talk about. That 10 to 15-foot jumper. Davion Bailey's actually pretty good at it. He's 6'4", has decent size for his position, but he's going to probably, my bet is he may see a Sion James or a Tyrese Proctor. Those guys are a different animal when it comes to defense, so we'll see what he can do against them. I wanted to highlight 2, maybe 3 other guys. Dylan Heyman is a wing who averages about 14 points per game. He hits better than 55% of his 3-pointers. Big old number, 55% from 3. Only takes about 3 3-pointers a game, so he doesn't take a lot of them. Waits till he's open. But he's a guy who can drain it from deep. And then I wanted to mention Jordan Pike. He is 6'7". He's a sophomore. He's likely the guy who'll be asked to guard Cooper Flagg. He's another guy who has nice touch creating for himself off the dribble. He's from Greensboro, North Carolina. Coming home from Texas to Greensboro. He's going to have fans there. He's going to have a crowd of fans and friends there to watch him attempt to guard. I really think he's the guy who's going to be matched up with Cooper Flagg. I mean, this is a dream for him, I'm sure. He's got a decent build, but I watched some highlights of him. I wanted to check him out. I don't think this guy's got the quickness to stay in front of Cooper. I just don't see it on his tape. So I think that could be a real problem for him. And then very fast, I wanted to mention their big man, their biggest player is 6'9" freshman Jaden Williams, who has some bulk. He's like 6'9", 230. He's a pretty good rebounder, very good rebounder, in fact. But, man, he's going to be giving up a bunch of inches to Man. Man has struggled. We've been talking about it a lot. Man has really struggled lately. Maybe this is a game that he gets himself a little bit on track because Jaden Williams is going to have some trouble matching up with 7'2" Common Malawach.
There's one player that you did not mention that doesn't get a lot of playing time, but I did want to note him. Jason, did you see, and he's not going to be guarding Cooper Flagg because he's 5'10". Did you see that TJ Ford Jr. is on this team?
Oh, I did not. Really?
TJ Ford Jr.
I didn't pay attention to his name. TJ Ford. I love it.
Yes,
Texas
TJ Ford,
star.
Of course.
Yeah.
Texas star, but also as again, to tie back to Duke, was high school teammates with Daniel Ewing. And they were a dynamic duo in high school. If you did not see those two play in high school, go check out those YouTube tapes. They are phenomenal because they were destroying people nationwide. But yes, TJ Ford Jr. is one of the guys on Incarnate Word. Now, Jason, you mentioned, I think you kind of did not look at my notes, but you greatly did the segue to the matchups.
I'm sorry, man.
No. The segue was great because I think the one thing you mentioned, right? A lot of these guys can't match up with some of our guys, at least on paper. This should be a game where we start to find the confidence again in some of these guys and the things that they do best. Whether that's Concanipple shooting threes, you mentioned Man, getting blocks and getting rebounds. Mason Gillis maybe getting a couple threes off. All the things that our guys do well that they haven't yet. Caleb Foster, right? Like getting active and maybe getting a couple of good shots. Getting these guys to gain their confidence and get some of that confidence back in this game. Because I think we'll be able to try some things and make it where these guys can get open. And maybe, again, I know John Shire doesn't do a lot of set plays, but he's been doing a few more lately, especially when we're down. Let's hope we don't have a deficit to start the game. But I think this is an opportunity where he can call some sets and say, okay, let's try and get Tyrese Proctor active. Let's try and get Concanipple a 3 in the corner. Let's try and get Isaiah Evans on a cut to the basket, or Sion James on a cut to the basket. Let's see if we can get Man a post up move so we can do that sky hook, whatever that is, right? I think this is a game where you can try to do that because I think obviously you want to get out to a comfortable lead and then start trying some of the stuff. But I think also the matchups work that way. And I think the best part about it is you mentioned one of the things I had circled was defend the three, shoot the three, right? Defend the three. We can't let them get off and shoot threes because they are actually very good at them. So we want to try and use our perimeter defense to shut that down. But then also we want to shoot threes because they allow a lot of them. And again, let's work the ball around. Let's get some open threes and let's make that happen. The final thing that I have, Jason, is one thing that Incarnate Word is not good at is moving the ball around. They don't get a lot of assists on their made baskets. We need to continue to make sure that they don't move the ball around and get open looks. Because again, I don't know if anyone's keeping track of these stats, but I can tell you just from the eye test, when guys are open against us, they are hitting the shots at a much better clip than when they have a hand in the face or when they have somebody in front of them.
Expert analysis from Donald Wine, folks.
Expert analysis. But the stats don't lie. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And the numbers say that if you put a hand in their face, it is much more difficult for them to make a basket. And with our suffocating defense, we should have hands in everybody's grill because, like I said, they're shooting threes well. So let's limit that from the beginning. But also, let's not give it to their big men and give them opportunities to gain any confidence in the post either. So I think this is a game where, again, we hopefully should win comfortably. But to do that, we have to do the little things and do the details to get out, get a comfortable lead, and then be able to just take it away from there.
Triple digits, baby. I'm going to predict it right now. And I know every time I predict something on this podcast, I get it wrong. Something happens. I'm going to say right now, Duke's getting 100 against these guys.
I'm going to laugh when it's 98. We'll leave it there. Again, Incarnate Word, you're listening to this on Tuesday, is tonight. Tonight at, I believe, 7 o'clock Eastern time. So tune in, watch that game. We will be back sometime after that game, probably Wednesday, to recap that. But let's take a quick break because on the other side, we shift to football. I was bowling when I found out where Duke was bowling. You don't want to know how I bowled, but let's find out where Duke bowled after this.
The sounds of the season can often sound like this.
So, when are we getting some grandkids?
But with Hilton's Season to Stay sale, they could sound a bit more like this. Or this. Stay and save up to 20% off when you book before January 5th at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay. Minimum 2-night stay required. Excludes luxury and all-inclusive properties. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Disney Plus. Game on, because ESPN Plus content is available on Disney Plus. You can watch your favorites from Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus together like never before. With ESPN Plus, unwrap a full day of NBA action on Christmas Day. Tip off the festivities with the Spurs and Knicks, followed by the Mavs and Timberwolves. Then a clash between the Lakers and Warriors, followed by the 76ers and Celtics. And finally, the Nuggets face off against the Suns, all streaming December 25th. Then with Hulu, watch the terrifying sci-fi thriller Alien Romulus, where a group of young space colonizers come face to face with the ultimate horror. And on Disney Plus, follow the adventures of 4 kids across the galaxy as they meet unlikely allies and enemies in Star Wars Skeleton Crew, starring Jude Law. All of these and more now streaming and available with a bundle subscription. Visit disneyplus.com for details. Terms apply.
The holidays are back at Starbucks, and there's so much to share. With classics like Caramel Brulee Latte, Peppermint Mocha, and Chestnut Praline Latte, we're celebrating everyone's flavor of festivity. Order yours in the app.
The wrongs we must right. The fights we must win. The future we must secure together for our nation. This is what's in front of us. This determines what's next for all of us. We are Marines. We were made for this.
All right, we are back and we are talking football because everyone else is in the world of sports right now. And of course, everyone's focused on the college football playoff, and we'll talk about the ACC's addition to that first ever 12-team playoff in a minute. But first, let's talk about where Duke ends up. Because of how the playoff happened, Clemson and SMU making it, Duke kind of got bumped up a bit. And because of that, they drew a very good bowl on a very good date against a very good team. Duke will take on Ole Miss in the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl. That is on Thursday, January 2nd. It is at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Jacksonville, Florida. Jason, the one thing about this game, forget the matchup for a second. I just want to say this. January 2nd at 7:30, there was no other football game on at that time. No other bowl games, not even the NFL, because the last week of the regular season, they don't do Thursday night football. This is a prime time matchup against a big time SEC opponent where that game is the only focus in the world of football in the United States. And I like that we have an extra few days compared to some of the other bowl games that we could have been up for. We're going, basically, we don't have any 2024 bowl games. We're playing in 2025, and we get that extra couple of days to get ready. And I think, and I know you agree with me, it's a huge deal to play a team who finished just outside of the playoff. Ole Miss finished 14th in the college football playoff, and some people were arguing that they should have been in. 9-3 on the year, just like us. But again, they have some really good victories on their schedule. Lane Kiffin. What more do you want, Jason? This is a really big time matchup, and I don't know. We'll talk about the actual matchup between the teams later on as we get closer to that game. Me and you will preview it, but man, am I excited for this opportunity for this football team to show that they can hang with the best teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they were 9-3. Duke was 9-3, but their schedule was very different. They played an SEC schedule. Schedule was very, very different than what Duke faced this year. I mean, like I said, it's a team that eyed the playoff all season long. I'm sure they're incredibly disappointed that they didn't make it. They spent virtually the entire season in the top 10. They beat Georgia, the number 2 seed. They beat Georgia by a score of 28-10 earlier this year. They have to be. I mean, Ole Miss just got to be completely haunted by a 2017 loss to Kentucky. Kentucky's a decent team, but Ole Miss is probably like, we should not have lost that game. If they don't lose that, if that one hiccup doesn't happen in their schedule, this team's like the 6 or 7 seed or something like that. I mean,
yeah,
they'd not only be in the playoff, they'd be up. And in fact, maybe depending on the dominoes, how they fall and the such, they might have been in the SEC title game, having a shot at like the number 2 seed. Come on. The early betting line in this game, Donald, I looked at it. Ole Miss is an 11.5 point favorite. That's actually better than I thought. I really thought Duke was going to be a 2 touchdown underdog in this game. 11.5 is a little bit of respect for the Blue Devils, which would be nice. And the last thing I have, again, we'll do an extensive preview as we get a little bit closer. The factor in this game that no one knows that really could matter a lot is who plays for Ole Miss.
Yes.
Because they're not in the playoff, let's just be clear, bowl game doesn't really matter all that much to them. And, what does their roster look like? They've got plenty of guys who could opt out of this game so they can prepare for the NBA draft. I'm sorry, NFL draft. I got basketball in mind, Guys who may say, I don't want to risk getting hurt. I just want to, and I want to begin working on the skills I need to show the NFL so that I can be, the highest draft pick I possibly can be. There are, according to Sports Illustrated, there are 6 Ole Miss players who are projected to be taken in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft, including 4 just studs on defense. A couple guys in the defensive line that, like, man, Duke is going to have trouble keeping those guys out of the backfield, out of, Malik Murphy's face. It's very possible those guys will just say, nope, I'm not going to bother with this, Gator Bowl. And for that matter, Jackson Dart, the QB for Ole Miss, he's been talked about. Quarterbacks are sort of harder to project, I think, than other positions. There's some people who say he could be a first rounder. He could slip a little. Who knows? But Jackson Dart's another guy who could easily just say, nah, I'm not going to bother. That's going to have a major impact on sort of where the line is for this game and frankly, Duke's chances in this game. I don't want to say we have no chance. I've seen enough of what Manny Diaz has been able to do that I'm never going to say that. But that's something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks is how many guys for Ole Miss say I'm there, how many guys say I'm entering the portal, And how many guys say I'm going to the NBA draft, NFL draft? God, I keep on saying NBA, NFL draft.
Yeah, I was gonna say not just the draft, but the portal. There's a lot of guys. Of course, they have a great class coming in, so there's a lot of guys who may say, "Hey, gonna take my chances elsewhere." That always happens with big schools like that. So thankfully, Duke has not had to really deal with that in bunches, both in basketball until this year. Basketball and football, but yeah, they're going to have some guys that are probably opt out. But at the same time, Jason, we will be without one of our own as well. Willie Simmons, I don't know if you saw this news, but Willie Simmons, the running backs coach this year, was just hired as the FIU head coach. So he will be going down to Pitbull country at Pitbull Stadium, and we will be at least without our main running backs coach this year, which is interesting, right? Because we've said that the running game has been what has define the offense and its lack up and downness this year. So I wonder how this team responds to that. But yeah, I think it's a great game for Duke. It's a great opportunity to again show that, hey, Duke is one of these teams. Because Jason, I don't know if you noticed this. We watched a lot of predictive football analysis this weekend up until the playoff was released. And as we segue into that, SMU makes the playoff. Right. And in SMU, they lost the ACC title game to Clemson. Clemson's in as the automatic bid, and then SMU gets an at-large bid. SMU, when they were comparing their records to everybody else who could or could not be in there, namely Alabama, they kept putting up key wins, and Duke was one of those names they always listed. We would like to return that favor and say, hey, we just want to make it clear that, yes, we should be a key win because, one, we should have won that game. And maybe that's us they're talking about in that sequence. You never know how the season progresses. But I do think that Duke has an opportunity here to re-announce itself as, hey, a team that is not going to go away. And year one of Manny Diaz, to be able to be in that position is absolutely incredible. And honestly, the best bowl game that we have been a part of since that Chick-fil-A bowl that we played against Johnny Manziel back in 2012, 2013. So, Jason, I moved that to quickly talk about the playoff. SMU's in, Clemson's in, the ACC gets two teams in after most people probably didn't think we should get any, and considering how the conference had played. But your thoughts on the playoff and how it transpired, and I wasn't necessarily surprised that SMU was rewarded for having a good regular season.
They deserved,
and also the fact that they kind of said we are not going to de-incentivize teams from playing in conference championship games because that would be a precedent that they would never be able to stick the toothpaste back in the tube. But this playoff, what are your thoughts on it? Clemson is going to Austin to play Texas, and I believe SMU is playing Penn State, which honestly I kind of like that matchup for them, despite the fact that it will be in Happy Valley and very, very cold.
Yeah, that's by the way, that's a really interesting spot. The SMU Penn State winner will get Boise State for a chance to be in the semifinals. And, Boise State, they earned where they are, no question about it. But I'm not so sure that isn't, especially I think if you're Penn State is probably really licking their chops and going, we got a path here that could really work out nicely for us. I think the bracket worked out perfectly fine. I really like the fact I was worried that they might penalize SMU. In my head, I knew that they couldn't, but I still worried that it was a possibility. And I think it's good, not just for Duke's bowl game, but it's good for the ACC to get two teams into this bracket that's dominated by the Big Ten and the SEC. The other thing is, I feel like, how long are we going to stay at 12? My bet is we're going to go to 16 very, very quickly. I mean, remember when 4 was 2 and then 4 was sacrosanct? We had all these huge debates, and last year was ridiculous with Florida State being left out. It was absurd. Now we got to 12, and it's all like, what about Alabama?
Who's number 13?
Yeah, what about Ole Miss? This is no fair. I guarantee you the powers that be, which means the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to be like, no, let's go to 16. And 16 makes a lot of sense. I kind of like 12 because I still think that there's some, you got to win games. Like Ole Miss, you blow a game to Kentucky, get out of here. Alabama, was it, I think it was Florida. I forget who it was. Vandy. Oh, Vandy. Yeah. Alabama blew a big game. Vandy. Done. There's still consequences to the regular season. I think that's a good thing. And I like the conference champions getting that first round bye, the top 4 teams. I think that's also a good thing, a good reward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had some debates on whether the conference champions should get those buys. I think a lot of people agree that there should be buys, and I judge that by the fact that every team was playing for one, right? Like everyone last night or yesterday was like, "Hey, we won our conference title. We should be getting a bye because we're better than these other 2 teams," or whatever that was.
Yeah.
The buys definitely work out for football. I wonder if they move to a thing where they reseed after the first round to avoid some of this. And again, it's year 1. They're gonna tinker with this every single year. But the one thing I think was people kind of circling was, hey, Alabama, okay, they're 8-3, or 9, was it 9-3?
9-3.
And you can argue, again, I saw this, Jason. This is not BS. I saw one where they did the blind resume test. They said, okay, which one of these teams would you take? And the blind resumes, and everyone picked option B, right? It was A or B. Option A was Alabama, and option B was Duke. So Alabama, if you're being compared to Duke, apparently you shouldn't be in this playoff because we weren't even in that conversation, right? We're not even ranked. And again, you don't lose to Oklahoma by a ton. You don't lose to Vandy by a ton and have them walk 5 miles to throw their goalposts in the river. Then we're not. Then you're in the playoff. But since we're talking about that, you guys you're going to the ReliaQuest Bowl and you're facing Michigan. Have fun with that. Call up Ohio State for any details. But I think they got it right with the teams. And I think at the end of the day, they may do some tinkering with it. But I think at least I'm intrigued by all of these matchups and how this playoff shapes in this very first year.
I got nothing else, man. I think let's call it quits and let's watch Duke play Incarnate Word.
Yeah, we gotta rest and actually do some work before that. So let's get out of here. We'll end it on this episode of DBR Bites. Again, after the game, wait 2 to 5 minutes after the game, then send your headlines to dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We will read them, our favorite ones, on the next episode, which again might come later tonight. We haven't talked about when we're going to record, but it will become at least 5 minutes after that game. So you may not have to wait long to hear us in your feeds once again. But until then, I am Donald Wine. He is Jason Evans. That sound you hear is the Duke Band, and they're going to play us out and take us home.